These are the most disturbing TV moments that were captured from the hostage taken live on These are the most disturbing TV moments that were captured, from the hostage taken live on TV to a stunt gone horribly wrong. I've put together a list of some of the most distressing TV moments that are bound to send you chills. Let's dive in. No escape. Even though it was a small local venue, the Station nightclub in West Warwick, Rhode Island was always full. But on February 20th, 2003, everything changed and it became the scene of one of the deadliest nightclub fires in US history. Originally, the place wasn't even supposed to be a nightclub, but when it was purchased by brothers Jeffrey and Michael Derderian, they turned it into one. However, they used cheap polyurethane foam to line the walls and ceilings. Polyurethane foam is highly flammable. And on the night of this deadly fire, a hard rock band called Great White was performing. And these guys were known for their signature 1980s flair and pyrotechnics. No one in the audience could have imagined that within minutes of the show's opening, the entire building would be engulfed in flames. Well, the small club became a death trap just seconds into Great White's first song when the band's tour manager, Daniel Michel, set off indoor fireworks. Within moments, sparks hit the foam behind the stage and the fire ignited. At first, the flames were met with cheers, as many thought it was just part of the show. But within seconds, fire climbed the walls and spread across the ceiling like a living thing, sending black smoke and hot air into the crowd. There was a lot of panic as the smoke thickened and visibility dropped to zero. And about 460 people rushed for the exits, but there weren't many of those. People quickly filled the main entrance, and some were even trampled in the rush. Survivors would later recall the smoke was so thick and toxic that it made it impossible to see more than a foot ahead. In just over 5 minutes, the building was fully engulfed, and those still inside had almost no chance of survival. In the days and months that followed, the investigation revealed a laundry list of failures, and ultimately, tour manager Michel pleaded guilty to 100 counts of involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. He served fewer than 4.
The court sentences defendant Michael Dadarian to 15 years at the Adult Correctional Institution. 4 years to be served by him in a minimum security prison, with the remaining 11 years to be suspended.
Michael Dadarian received a similar sentence, while Jeffrey Dadarian was given community service. Balloon Boy hoax. On October 15, 2009, in Fort Collins, Colorado, Richard and Mayumi Heen called 911 in a panic. They claimed their 6-year-old son, Falcon, had accidentally floated away in a silver saucer-shaped helium balloon that had somehow escaped their backyard. Within minutes, the story took off like a helium balloon on steroids. News helicopters were scrambled, major networks cut into programming to cover it live. FAA officials grounded flights. Search and rescue teams were on high alert. Millions watched in real time as the balloon soared through the sky for nearly 60 miles and over 2 hours at altitudes reaching 7,000 feet. Then, 2 hours later, it crashed in a field. But when the authorities checked inside, there was no kid to be found. Turns out Falcon was never in the balloon and had been hiding in the attic the whole time. When the family was later interviewed by reporters and they asked the kid why he didn't come out, he simply said, "They did it for the show." Yup, the family called in a fake 911 call. And lied to the police and media for a few minutes of fame. It was basically a publicity stunt. The couple was sentenced to a couple of months in jail and made to pay $36,000 in restitution. Albert Dryden. On June 20th, 1991, a routine police operation in County Durham, England, turned into one of the most horrifying things ever shown on live British television. A 51-year-old former steelworker named Albert Dryden had shot and killed council planning officer Harry Collinson for unlawful building on Dryden's land. But to understand what truly happened, you have to go back a few years. The conflict all started when Dryden constructed a partially sunken bungalow on his rural property without planning permission from any legal bodies. The council heard about this and asked him to demolish the structure, but the man vehemently refused. They sent several warnings and even threatened to take legal action, but Dryden refused to stop building. Finally, the council had to intervene, and led by Collinson, they sent a team to the site to begin demolition. Media and police were also present to document and maintain order. However, as Collinson was calmly speaking to the cameras explaining what was happening, Dryden walked up to him, drew a revolver, and shot Collinson straight in the chest. He then fired additional shots that hit a police officer and injured a BBC journalist.
As more shots were fired from a pistol, the camera crew and Look North reporter Tony Belmont ran for cover.
We were standing watching what was going on. The chief planner was trying to persuade the chap to move out the way and let the digger go in. And then a shot rang out, the chief planner fell to the ground, and I felt a shot in the arm, and I've clearly been shot here in the arm. I'm now hopefully going to get some medical treatment.
The chaos was broadcast live, horrifying viewers and sparking national outrage. Dryden didn't express much regret during his trial. He said he was pushed too far and that he felt backed into a corner. The court didn't agree, so he was found guilty of murder and attempted murder and sentenced to life in prison. But then in 2017, he suffered a massive stroke and was released from prison on compassionate grounds. He eventually died quietly in 2018, age 78, in a care home. The incident served as a grim reminder of how even administrative matters like planning enforcement can spiral into violence when anger festers and no one backs down. NBC taken live hostage. On August 9th, Nineteenth, 1987, during a routine 4 p.m. newscast on KNBC TV in Los Angeles, a man carrying what looked like a gun wandered onto the set and interrupted the entire show. While the TV guys were still trying to process what was happening, he pointed the gun directly at consumer reporter David Horowitz, with the cameras rolling, and handed him a typed statement demanding it be read aloud live on air. Horowitz, who is known for being calm, did exactly as he was told and started to read the document, which was full of crazy claims about the CIA, mind control, and psychiatric abuse.
To read this this copy which was just handed to me, you want to tell me your name or not? What is it? Gary. And Gary, where are you? From?
However, in the back room, the station's control technicians acted quickly by cutting the live feed and switching to a holding screen. So basically, people at home didn't see all the drama happen. Back in the studio, the intruder stood silently as Horowitz read every word, and as soon as he finished, he set the weapon down on the desk. That's when anchor John Beard, who had had been sitting nearby quickly stepped in and restrained him. When the police arrived, they found out that his name was Gary Stolman, plus the gun wasn't even real, it was just a toy replica. But replica or not, the danger had felt very real in the moment. Thankfully, Stolman was arrested without further incident. The ordeal only lasted a few minutes, but it left a lasting impression on the broadcasting world. The fact that someone could walk onto a live set with a weapon, even a fake one, sparked new conversations about studio security and the risks of unscripted live television. Horowitz later advocated for regulations against realistic-looking toy guns. Space Shuttle Challenger crash. Space travel has always been fascinating, but in the 1980s, NASA's Space Shuttle program was basically the crown jewel of America's space program. So when it came time to launch the STS-51L in 1986, there was a very intense hype around the whole program. And this was because this time around, NASA had included a civilian on board. Her name was Christa McAuliffe, a winner of the National Screen for Pilots and a high school teacher from New Hampshire. She was among the 7 other brave souls selected to embark on that journey to space, and the plan was simple. The amazing teacher would go to space and then share her unique perspective of everything she'd witnessed with her students. The moment was going to be a history-making, groundbreaking, and very patriotic experience that was all being captured on live TV for everyone at home. But just 73 seconds after liftoff, the whole world witnessed something terrible. The shuttle literally broke apart midair, turned into a massive fireball, and started falling straight into the Atlantic. People tried to wrap their heads around what had just happened. How could something that was supposed to be a groundbreaking moment in history quickly become such a national tragedy? During investigations, it was discovered that the temperatures had dropped unusually low the night before. The engineers didn't think it was a great idea to launch, but NASA ignored these warnings and launched the shuttle. Sadly, the entire accident could have been avoided if only NASA had listened and done the right thing. Plus, the fact that everything was broadcast on live TV was just a gut-wrenching experience as a symbol of dreams literally turned to ashes in front of them. Mick Philpott. In the early hours of May 11, 2012, a house in Derby, England was engulfed in flames. As firefighters battled the blaze and desperate attempts were made to save the sleeping children inside, few could have imagined the dark truth behind the fire. 6 young lives, Dwayne, Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, and Jaden, were lost that morning. The public mourned, assuming it to be a horrific accident, but as the investigation unfolded, the real story behind the tragedy shocked the nation. At the center of it all was Mick Philpott, a man and already known to the public through media appearances that showcased his unusual lifestyle. He lived with his wife, May Reed, and his former mistress, Lisa Willis, sharing a home and fathering children with both. He was often criticized for exploiting the welfare system to support his large family, and he wore that criticism with a twisted sense of pride. But behind the scenes, Philpott was a controlling and manipulative figure who dictated every aspect of the household. What the women wore, how they spent their money, even when they were allowed to leave the house. The fire was not an accident. Philpott, along with May Reed and their friend Paul Mosley, had devised a plan to set the blaze intentionally. Their aim all along was to frame Lisa Willis, who had recently left Philpott and taken her children with her, in an attempt to win back custody and public sympathy. Philpott believed he could emerge from the fire as a tragic hero. The grieving father who had tried and failed to rescue his children. But the plan spiraled out of control. The fire spread faster than anticipated, and instead of staging a dramatic rescue, Philpott watched as 6 of his children succumbed to smoke inhalation. His televised tears in the days that followed painted a picture of heartbreak, but investigators were already seeing through the act. As evidence mounted, so did the questions. How could a father do something so calculated and so cold? Eventually, the truth was undeniable. All 3, Philpott, May Reed, and Mosley, were convicted of manslaughter. Philpott was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum Reed and Mosley were convicted of manslaughter. Philpott was sentenced calculated and so cold. Eventually, the truth was undeniable. All 3, Philpott, May Reed, and Mosley, were convicted of manslaughter. In prison with a minimum of 15 years, May Reed and Mosley each received seeing through the act. As evidence mounted, so did the questions. How His televised tears in the days that followed painted a picture of heartbreak, but investigators were already seeing through the act. As evidence mounted, so did the questions. How could a father do something so calculated and so cold? Eventually, the truth was undeniable. All 3, Philpott, May Reed, and Mosley, were convicted of manslaughter. Philpott was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years. May Reed and Mosley each received 17 years with eligibility for release after serving half their terms. Wetten, das accident. Everyone loved The Wetten, das Show. It was a German family show that made Saturday night TV unforgettable. Families from all around the country would tune in at exactly 9 p.m. to watch the entertainment. Even A-listers like Beyoncé, Tom Hanks, and the Pope would make appearances a lot of the times. The show was also very popular because people would normally bet on themselves doing bizarre stunts like jumping over cars or swallowing flaming knives. It was a huge deal. But on the 4th of December 2010, something happened that would shatter the magic and fun times this show was all about. It all began when Samuel Koch, a 23-year-old aspiring stunt performer and university student, made a bet that he could jump over 5 moving cars using power stilts. Each car would be driven by a different person, with one of the drivers being his father. The whole stunt was tricky Incredibly dangerous, but undoubtedly very thrilling. When it was time to perform, Samuel successfully scaled the first and second cars cleanly, but on the third jump, something went wrong midair. Samuel clipped the vehicle, flipped midair, and crashed headfirst into the ground, and everything was live on air. The atmosphere immediately filled with tension, and an audible gasp could be heard from everyone. Viewers at home sat frozen as they saw the unthinkable happen in real time. Samuel was rushed to the hospital with severe spinal injuries, and after several hours in surgery, it was confirmed that he was paralyzed from the neck down. The poor man was a quadriplegic at 23, but he turned his pain into purpose, and today he is a successful motivational speaker and actor. The hijacking of Bus 174. What seemed to be a very regular Monday in Brazil quickly developed into a national tragedy that no one anticipated. Basically, on June 12, 2000, as commuters boarded the buses to get to their various destinations, Bus 174 was also boarded and then hijacked by a man named Sandro Barbosa do Nascimento. When he hijacked the bus, there were only 10 passengers on board, and for the few hours, he made their lives a living hell. The man was armed with a gun and behaved in a highly erratic and unhinged way. He'd hold the hostages up against the window and force them to scream while he held guns to their heads. At times, he'd start crying and then suddenly start laughing again while telling the police and media repeatedly that he had nothing to lose. The man was losing it. And get this, everything was broadcast live on national TV while nothing was actively being done to free the hostages. Eventually, he started to negotiate with the authorities, but nothing seemed to be working. At one point, Sandro used a hostage as a human shield, pressing her against the window for all to see while the cameras zoomed in on the horrified woman like it was some sort of horror movie commercial. After many hours of failed negotiations and disruptions, the police decided to attempt a rescue mission, and this is where everything literally hit rock bottom. First of all, they were not even strategic in their rescue attempt because as the police officers tried to sneak up on the bus, Sandro saw him and shot at him. In the screaming confusion and fear, Sandro came out of the bus, but he was with Geisa Firmo Gonçalves, whom he used as a human shield. Then, instead of calming down the already agitated man holding an innocent victim, the police fired a sniper, but the bullet missed Sandro and hit Geisa instead. killing her. Chaos literally broke out in the streets, but Sandro was later captured alive, handcuffed, and put into the back seat of a police car. Unfortunately, he never made it to the station alive. Apparently, he died of asphyxiation in the police car, most likely from being choked or having his nose and mouth closed forcibly. But of course, the cops claimed he suffocated accidentally. The entire ordeal was just a complete mess that could have been avoided if the police, media, and government had handled the situation differently. But sadly, it ended in a huge tragedy that cost the lives of 2 innocent people. The San Diego tank rampage. On May 17, 1995, a 35-year-old man named Sean Nelson decided to literally carry out his own version of Grand Theft Auto, and it went horribly wrong. You see, Sean was a U.S. Army veteran and unemployed plumber who was going through some really rough times. He was battling depression and substance abuse, and his house was in foreclosure. His plumbing business had gone down the drain, and his wife had left him, so it's very safe to assume that the man was seriously spiraling. But instead of going to therapy or seeking help, somehow this man broke into the California National Guard Armory and stole a 57-ton M60 Patton tank. Yep, he broke into an armory in broad daylight and stole a freaking military tank. And that's not even the worst part, because he then proceeded to joyride it through the streets of San Diego for over 23 minutes, destroying and plowing over everything and anything in his path. The entire event was captured on live TV, which makes it even more surreal. Footage shows police cars chasing after this tank and being unable to do anything to stop the destruction. At one point, Nelson tried to drive the tank over a concrete highway divider, and thankfully it got stuck. That's when the police could climb on top, open the hatch, and shoot him dead after he refused to surrender. Tommy's last show. Tommy Cooper wasn't like the other comedians you were used to, and that's what made him special. This guy made people laugh by making a fool of himself on purpose. He would fumble cards, say words wrongly, and just be silly while the audience laughed till they literally cried. But on April 15th, 1984, families in Britain were tuned in to a primetime variety show known as Live from Her Majesty's. The show was all about providing live entertainment and lighthearted humor. And if there was anyone who knew about humor, it was definitely Britain's most beloved comedian, Tommy Cooper. So of course he was going to perform on the show. And as he stepped onto the stage, he was welcomed with loud whistles and warm applause, as he had been 1,000 times before. The audience was ready for jokes, expected slapstick puns, and his signature wheeze laugh. Instead, they received something that no one could have planned. Mid-performance, Tommy stumbled backwards and collapsed right there on the stage. Initially, the crowd erupted in laughter. They thought it was part of the act. This was Tommy Cooper, after all, the king of clumsy timing. However, as Tommy remained motionless, the tension and silence gradually increased, and they soon began to realize how serious the situation actually was. Medics were immediately rushed in to check on him, while everyone hoped it was just another of Tommy's gags gone too far, but it wasn't. Cooper had suffered a massive heart attack and died behind the curtain, just feet away from the stage where millions had watched him fall. The show would go on because it was live television and no one really knew how to stop it. That night became one of the darkest, most haunting moments in British broadcasting history. If you loved watching this video, then you should definitely check out this video on the most disturbing videos before disaster happened.